Kabimba State Council, a senior opposition figure, lawyer and seasoned statesman in his own right. He's
writing this book. I can tell you that he has so much respect for writers. They should be part of the discourse of this country.
Okay. So we're discussing legacy, loss, leadership on this week's edition of Oxygen of Democracy, and this is at a time that the country is mourning the loss of the former late president, that's Edgar Chagwa, who passed on the 5th of June 2025, to be buried next week. And so Mr. Kabimba is helping us discuss this particular aspect. As we begin this discussion, my introduction, I mentioned that you were in the same party, in the Patriotic Front, with the late former president.
Yes.
But let's get it from you. When was your initial contact with Edgar Chagwa?
1979. That's the time when the two of us met as law school students. We joined the law school together in 1979. And we graduated on the same day in October of 1981. I can't remember the date. And after that, in fact, before that, we had already forged a relationship. You know, we belong to many times, you know, each year to the same tutorial groups. So every time, you know, we are done with the tutorial studies, you know, we'd go for lunch, walk, you know, or dining all together. We attended lectures together. And it was different that time because
was there any other time before we branch into the chapter of you now meeting in the political field?
No. I think his first job was with the legal aid department. I went to Lusaka City Council. He stuck into the council for 15 years, and I know that he worked for the legal aid department. He also worked for ZISC, the Zambia State Insurance Corporation. He went on to work for ZCCM as company secretary, and then he went to Mulungushi Investments Limited, which was a subsidiary of ZCCM. And he went and worked as the company secretary there.
Did you follow his works?
No.
Okay.
No. Even then we sort of branched off into different works.
And later on, so we read and he's explained a number of times. He went into now private practice after serving as a corporate lawyer at some point.
Yes, he joined Masia and Company.
Did you follow his works after that?
No. We met, you know, from time to time at court. Because he was then in private practice. I was still with the Lusaka City Council. Yeah.
Why I'm asking this is, as we are forming this discussion on legacy, loss, and leadership, so much has been interpreted on the type of a lawyer he was. In your own words, how would you describe him?
He was a good lawyer. He was a good lawyer. That's what I can say. He was a good lawyer.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about now him and you in the same political party, the Patriotic Front.
I found ECL in the Patriotic Front. Okay. PF was formed in 2001, August 2001, when Michael Sata was dribbled in the leadership of the MMD by FTJ. Okay, so in protest, he left the MMD.
When you said dribbled, you mean that he was digressing a bit? You believe Michael Sata was supposed to be the leader of MMD at some point?
Yes, I think so. He was one of the most experienced politicians. He was the Secretary General or National Secretary of party, and I think he had a good following. He had a good following, you know, in the MMD. That if they had gone for a free democratic convention in MMD, Michael Sata would have won that election. Just like he won the national secretary election. Okay? When he contested the position of national secretary, one of his opponents was VJ Mwanga. And I remember meeting somebody during that period, during that week, who actually had a bet with me that VJ would beat Michael. And I said, Sata is going to prevail. He was a shrewd campaigner, he was a grassroots fellow. Okay?
Were you a politician?
I was still in Lusaka City Council, but I was Michael's disciple because I'd worked with Michael Sata from the time he was councillor in Lusaka City Council in 1980, 1981. Okay, so by the time he became national secretary of the MMD, we already had good links and good rapport. Okay. So I saw Michael, and I can tell you, that week I actually spent 2 days from work just transporting delegates, who were Michael's supporters from the University of Zambia, where they were accommodated to the Mulungushi conference.
While you still worked at Lusaka City Council?
Yes, and that by a bit of time from Lusaka City Council to help Michael, campaign. And my vehicle was a Vanette, a Mazda Vanette. So I was transporting people. And apart from VJ, the other contestant was Chitalu Samba, who had been placed there by Michael Sata to split the the northern vote. So there was VJ, there was Chitalu Samba, there was Michael Sata. And I remember, if this is a digression you want for the viewers,
please go ahead. I
remember when I picked up delegates from the University of Zambia. I remember them saying, as jumping, onto my van, they were saying, Sampa, tukamoloko akaya, So they were very hostile to Chitalu Sampa because they knew he had been planted there by FTJ against Michael Sata. But Michael won that election. The point I'm making is that if FTJ had allowed a free democratic convention in the MMD for the presidency, Michael Sata would have won that election. And
yes, getting back to the ECL story, I believe you joined the Patriotic Front.
I found the ECL in PF. That's the point I wanted to make.
Okay, yes.
Okay, so I found him. He had already joined. PF had been formed in 2001, and he attempted the Chawama seat on UPND, I think in 2001, and lost. And then he joined the PF. In 2006, he was supposed to be the candidate. For some reason, Michael Sata preferred a lady, Reverend Sampa Brett, who stood in Chawama in place of ECL. And after that, ECL was adopted in 2011. So by the time I was joining PF in 2006, ECL had already been there. I found him there.
How was your relationship with a colleague that you were friends with in law school, ECL?
It was good. We met now, so we were reminiscing about our days, at the university, and it was good that we had met. I think we were both happy that we had met. Now, not in an academic field, but in politics.
Later on, he stayed in the Patriotic Front and ended up leading the party after the demise of the founding president of the PF.
Yes.
And at that point, you had already left the PF.
No.
You left PF after... leading to the formation of Rainbow Party, isn't it?
Yeah. Michael Sata died on the 28th of October, 2014. After that period, after that date, there were events in the PF which clearly showed me that the Michael Sata era, as we had constructed it, as we had anticipated it going into the future to govern this country, had come to an end. That was my conclusion. I knew that PF after Michael would not be the same PF that I belonged to during Michael Sata's era. So I had to make a decision. Okay? Firstly, like I said yesterday, in yesterday's program, I was barred from attending Michael Sata's funeral. The man that I loved so much, the man that I had known for over 30 years. I was banned or prevented from attending that funeral by fellows that didn't even know the man. Okay? So, I said to myself, I find it very difficult for me to adapt to situations that do not make sense. I said to myself, Wynter, this doesn't make sense. There is no future in this. It won't be the same again. This is not what you worked for the period that I was in PF. So I decided I would resign. I know out there, there's somebody who said during one of my radio programs that you were expelled from PF. I was not expelled from PF. I resigned. I voluntarily resigned from PF on the 14th of November, 2014.
The expulsion was the ministerial position? I mean, the dropping of the ministerial position?
Yes.
You still remain a dedicated member of the PF?
Yes. I remained a member because when I was fired on the 28th of August, Mr. Sata said, my appointment was revoked as SG of the party, my appointment was revoked as Minister of Justice, but I would continue as Member of Parliament nominated. Okay? And I refused. So I resigned from Parliament voluntarily. So as far as I was concerned, you can take all the positions. You have taken the position of SG, you have taken the position of Minister of Justice. Here is your other position. Maybe you forgot. Here is another position, your other position of nominated member of Parliament.
Why did you do that? Why?
I didn't see it making sense. That I'm not good as SG, I'm not good as minister, but I should be good as a member of Parliament.
Were you disappointed with the turn of events?
Of course I was disappointed. I'm just human. If I said I was not disappointed, I would be lying. I was disappointed. And that's just human. But obviously, I've learned in life to come out of any disappointment. That was not the first disappointment in my life. I'd been disappointed before. So what I've learned is to keep myself collected, accept the disappointment, and rise out of that disappointment. Because one disappointment cannot determine my destiny.
So when you resigned as member of Parliament, after you were told that you can still hold on to being nominated member of Parliament, you did remain as member of the Patriotic Front?
Yes. Yes.
As just an ordinary member?
Yes. I joined as an ordinary member. I had no problems with remaining an ordinary member. Until I saw the turn of events, and I realized this cannot be the PF in which I can continue to participate. So on the 14th of November, I handed my letter of resignation to Guy Scott, who was then substantively the president of the party.
Leave the PF completely.
To leave the PF completely.
And
I never looked back.
From many people that I know who were with you then, as in the Patriotic Front, many have described you as one of the best mobilizers, one of the best SGs the PF has ever had. You managed to retain, so they say, a certain level of membership during your tenure. One would have thought that you would stay along and maybe seek a mandate from the party that you dedicated your life to lead it at the helm of presidency.
Yes. But let me repeat what I've just said, maybe in a different way. My character is one such that I always want to live in an orderly environment. I always want to see order where I am. Okay? I want to see order around my life. If I come to a studio like this, I want to see order. That's just my natural reaction. Okay? If I'm going to work in a company, I want to see order. I want to see order in my house. That's me. I didn't see any semblance of order in PF after Michael Sata. So that flew into my face as something that I could not live with. I had only two choices: to adapt to disorder and anarchy, or come out. And for me, the choice was obvious. I had to come out. And if anyone wants to be honest about the PF after that, I'll tell you that it was a lawless organization. It was anarchical.
Would you consider the 60th Republican president as your friend?
Yes.
So
I'm not even considering, I'm saying it.
So when your friend became the presidential candidate of the PF, why didn't you go back and adapt to your friend? Because it was going to be easier to bring the disorder that you're talking about to order.
I didn't see ECAO as a very assertive leader. He was a good man. He was a good guy. But I didn't see him as an assertive leader.
In political terms, what do you mean?
I didn't see him as somebody who could put his foot down, and say, this cannot be done like this in this organization. Which is what I saw in Michael Sata. Okay?
He was also assertive?
Yes. But Michael sometimes could advocate for anarchy. But it was easy, to speak to him that it can't go this way. So I didn't see, but even as much as he was my friend, I couldn't live with a disorder that had begun to thrive in the PF under him.
So from your own assessment, when did the PF begin to disintegrate?
Oh, not disintegrate. I don't think that's the way, The PF's direction changed after Michael Sata died, and they were now looking for the next leader of the party. Okay? And if you remember, I think there was something like 6 or so candidates. Okay? ECA was one of them. Miles Samples another. Kambwili was a candidate. Mrs. Sata, Christine Kaseba Sata was a candidate. GBM was a candidate. At least these 5 I can remember. Okay? The constitution of PF is very clear that when a situation like that arises, like it has arisen now, they must go to the General Conference. And at the General Conference, the one that we held in June of 2011, the first General Conference for PF since its formation in 2001. 10 years later, PF had not gone to the General Conference. And I can tell you that it was a mammoth task to organize a General Conference for PF in 2011. So they went for a General Conference which should have been a free and democratic General Conference. The hell just broke loose there. This is what I came to learn, because I was not there. There was no secret ballot election. It's alleged that there were people wielding pangas around. People were being insulted. They even insulted Mrs. Sata, the woman they were calling to when Sata was alive. They started calling her names, using vulgar language. They didn't even have the decency to continue respecting, Sata in his wife. They didn't have that decency. Just in order to create disorder to get their way for their candidate. So it was from then on that things went wrong for PF. And there was nobody in PF who could say, this is wrong.
Did you try to make contact?
No, I was not interested. Make contact for what?
So when you resigned from PF as a political party, when you resigned as a member, your loyalty ceased to the party completely?
It's a society, bwana. This is like a club. If you stop being a member of the Lusaga Golf Club, where does your loyalty lie? It ceases. I had to look for other options. And PF was not my only life. I had to find another lifeline. And forget about PF. Like I've said, I just couldn't conceive an idea in my mind that I would be part of that anarchy. I couldn't.
So let's describe now, though you are giving hints on how you're going to describe the Patriotic Front leadership under ECL. How would you describe it, especially now at that time, they were the ruling party?
Sorry?
They were the Patriotic Front was the ruling party. How do you describe now his leadership as Republican president? That's the 60th Republican president.
I've already said it. I've already said it, that, ECL was a good man, but he came across to me as a weak leader.
Sure.
Okay? Look, it is one thing, to be, to be a minister. It is another thing to be a PS. It will be another thing to be a deputy minister. It's one thing, to be head of state. To lead a country. To preside over a cabinet meeting. To define a vision, to transpose your values in the colleagues around you, that this is what if this country has to take a positive direction. It's not easy. It's not for everybody. Okay? So he was a good man.
Following his death, descriptions have been made. Others on a balanced approach, others with a vested political opinion on the description of this country in terms of our political environment.
Yeah.
The main word that is coming off is tension. From your assessment, do you think Zambia is engulfed in political tension?
Look, I hear that word every time people are talking about oh no, there is tension in this country. You know? Oh no, there is tension in this country. Okay?
Sure.
I don't believe in that word.
There's no political tension.
There's no political tension in this country. What we need to do, Alexander, is people must get into politics for a purpose. And that purpose must be public service. And public service entails that you serve the weak, the underprivileged, the disaffected, the dispossessed, the poor. All those descriptions. That should be what would drive you to get into public service. That when you want to run an organization or to belong to an organization, that organization must be orderly, it must have values, common, to everybody who is in the organization. Those values must be values that should collectively serve your society, your country at the end of the day. Okay? What we have in the country are pockets, so-called political parties, many of them without any collective values, shared values, with weak leaders that are populist from within to the outside, no moral code of discipline, no assertive leadership, no one seemingly in control. So what happens is that indiscipline thrives in that organization. And because you have this indiscipline thriving, and this is an organization, if for example it is in power, it spills over to other citizens. Now the other citizens have to resist. They don't want to be part of your indiscipline. Okay? Now, when they raise their voice, because you are in power and they are in a weak position, you take advantage of them. That's what was happening with PF. They beat up, people on the street. They were clad in military regalia, even as the law says you can't wear military regalia if you are not a military person. Okay? They gave themselves titles of commanders. Have you ever heard of a commander in the Democratic Party in America? Even in the ANC in South Africa. Have you ever heard of the word commander? And somebody wearing, long boots, and with red eyes, looking like Superman in a cartoon. How come when Michael Sata was there were no commanders in PF? Because we said this is going to be an organization that will have discipline. It has a moral code of discipline. It must serve the Zambian people. People should not be running away from the party or from members of the party. They must be attracted to the party. We have an article, a clause in our constitution as economic front, that one, want to see mutual respect between members. You and I, if you are EF. But over and above that, because of the experience we learned from PF, we added another clause that members of the economic front have an obligation to respect non-EF members. You have a duty as a member of the economic front to respect a non-member of the economic front. If we find out that you have insulted a citizen of this country out there, if we find out that two of our youths, were harassing, a citizen of this country who is not a member of the economic front, the punishment, the sanction is expulsion from the party. That was not the case under PF. People were crying every day. People were worried to move, to get on a bus. People were not able to trade freely in markets. Police officers were being beaten up at a police station.
So
let me finish. And that political organization can deliver this country out of poverty, and that political organization can cultivate peace and love in this country? The answer is no. So the tension,
sure, yes.
So the tension comes from this spillover of indiscipline in political parties that are being managed in an environment of want of a moral code of discipline.
So your description is that there is no political tension.
Nothing.
As being explained, or as being given by a number of stakeholders.
No, look. If you are going to be a citizen of Zambia and you have no respect, for example, for government, what do the rules say? What do the laws say? There will be sanctions. And when you are sanctioned, you call that tension. No. We must have discipline in a country. We must have discipline in this country if this country is going to see economic prosperity.
So, talking of back to the ECO legacy.
Go back.
Post-election 2021.
Yes.
He retired and from active politics, and later on, he went back into active politics,
yes,
saying that he's been harassed too much, and the party that he loved so dearly was being ripped apart, yes, by those in government, and he came back to save the political party. Now, let's look at the treatment of him being former president and the reasons advanced why he was going back into politics.
I met ECO on at least 2 or 3 occasions, and I asked him a question: are you getting back to politics? And on 3 occasions his answer was no, mwana. 3 occasions. Gave me the same answer. I went to some people that I saw as his friends, and I will not mention their names, and I asked them the question: is this man serious that he's not getting back into politics? They gave me the same answer. I asked him the same question, and his answer was no. So I was surprised when on the 28th October 2023, the man announced that after having consulted widely, after having prayed so many days, weeks, months, he had decided to come back to active politics. I was surprised.
Why were you surprised?
Because I had spoken to him. If I had not spoken to him, I would not have been surprised. But I was surprised.
He had his reasons.
Yes, I'm not contesting his reasons.
Mm-hmm. From your assessment, were they justified reasons?
No. The reasons were personal. I don't want to delve into that. Mm-hmm. Okay? I'm just talking about the man that I've spoken to. He said that he didn't have any intentions of getting back into politics. He did. I'm not faulting him for that. That was a decision. And I rested my case there. So
he got back into politics, and
yes,
and now there's this discussion, like our topic this evening, his legacy, and some of his supporters and other Zambians are talking about his legacy to be respected, and just the general discussion on how this country treats its former leaders, especially when they leave politics, because this story spans from the post-presidency of our first Republican President, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, post-presidency of the second Republican President, Dr. Fred Chiluba. From your observation, do you think this country has been on the right path in trying to analyze ourselves, how we should have one line of thought in treating the former leaders of this country?
Look, a lot of the things that we discuss,
sure,
Alexander, in this country as problems, in my view, are really not problems. Okay? Mm-hmm. They are issues of attitudes. Okay? And an attitude or a collectivity of attitudes may not pose a problem. So that's a mental issue. How you want to treat others. This problem started with the Kaunda, like you state. When MMD defeated UNIP, they did not concentrate on we have taken over power, the country was going down economically, we disagreed with the one-party state, there was no democratic voice, etc., etc. What they did, they embarked on the journey of vengeance, hunting down their perceived enemies. And their enemy number one was Keke. And you may not know this, that the big number of the people that constituted MMD as a political party, even when it started, were people that had been locked up by Dr. Kaunda for different offenses. Mandrax trafficking of other drugs, breach of financial regulations that were very tight at that time. Kaunda had set up an organization called the CITET. Okay, it was CITET was the an organization that dealt with the economic offenses. Okay? So, a lot of people were aggrieved, even though that were locked up for genuine offenses. They were aggrieved. So when they won, when they took over power, and that's why I did, that's one of the reasons why I didn't vote for MMD in 1991. Again, my instinct just said, I can't vote for this crop of people.
You voted for UNIP?
I voted for UNIP because I wanted order under Kaunda. I saw Kaunda as a disciplined leader, the one that wanted order. Okay? So for me, between Chiluba and Kaunda, I voted for Kaunda. And I'm glad I was not wrong. I was vindicated later.
And in 1996?
1996?
The next elections of 1991, what did you vote for? You maintained not voting for MMD?
I didn't vote for MMD even in 1996. So, the point I'm making is this, that KK was humiliated. Firstly, I'll tell you this is interesting. KK had locked up Chiwa in 1980, 81. Okay? The reason why he locked up Chiluba, he locked 3 people: Frederick Chiluba, Chitalu Sampa, and Newstead Zimba. Frederick Chiluba was the president of the CTU. Newstead Zimba was the Secretary General. Sampa was the treasurer, national treasurer. There were riots on the Copper Belt. And according to Kaunda's intelligence, these were the instigators of the riots. So he locked them up. And President Chiluba took out a habeas corpus application, and he was released from custody by an expatriate judge called Judge Moodley, and I was present that day in the courtroom. Now listen to the story. When in 1980, it was during the same period that Shamana and the group, Shamana Mundia Skatana, Valentine Musakanya, Geno Mianda, who is still living today, and the others were locked up for treason, attempting to overthrow the UNIP government. I came to learn later that when FTJ arrested and imprisoned Kaunda, Kaunda was locked up, was put in the same cell in Chimbwakaira where FTJ had been in 1980. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. That's a level of vengeance. Kaunda was searched in broad daylight as having stolen books, and they found 0. We were told by the MOD that there were tunnels under State House which were being used as torture chambers where Kaunda was allegedly torturing people and killing people. Not even one human being or halfway bone of a human being was found in those chambers. What surprised me is this: nobody in the MMD could raise a voice to Chiluba or others and say, this is wrong. Nobody. Nobody could utter the slogan, "One Zambia, One Nation," I think in the 10 years, if I'm not mistaken, of MMD. Because it's Kaunda. Now, the point I'm making is this, that it will take a long time for us as a people to learn to move forward after change of government if we don't cultivate a culture of continuity and want of vengeance. Get vengeance out. Let me finish my train of thought. Okay? But the other problem that we are faced with is this. We're having people now that are leaders that are assuming leadership positions in politics, like I said at the beginning, that have not come to save the Zambian people. Okay? They come to accumulate material possessions at the expense of the people that voted for them. I gave one example, and I'll give it again on this program. If you went to Parliament, even today, okay, go and get and plot a graph for some of parliamentarians and even some of the ministers, especially those that come from, that represent rural constituencies, and they actually came from that rural setup. This is what you find. You find that their material well-being and affluence over a period of 3, 4, 5 years has gone exponentially high. They are parking 5 vehicles at their homes, 10 vehicles, in their yard. They wear Pierre Cardin, our Versace shirts and jackets. Okay? They have built, big houses. They have lived sometimes even more than one.
That's parliamentarians.
And ministers. Oh, the ministers are parliamentarians. So you plot that graph, it will go from the bottom and it will go upwards. Now, you plot the graph of the people they represent over the same period of time. You find the people are still drinking water which is not clean. They are still living in the same shelters. Nothing has improved. They still don't have enough food. Their children are still dying from malnutrition. Their wives are still dying in childbirth. So the graph of the representative is going up. The graph of the people he or she represents is going down. And you call that politics? The answer is no. So let me finish.
Sure.
So it means something is wrong somewhere. So when governments change, the way the government changed in 2021,
Sure.
okay, HH comes on the scene, like Levy did when he took over office. He said there is corruption here, and HH comes and says, guys, there is corruption. There are people that took from what belonged to the people, dipped their long fingers in the treasury of this country, and we must bring this culture to an end. So the investigate wings get on with the job. People are arrested. People are prosecuted. And what do you hear? being prosecuted because I come from this province. In fact, they don't even use prosecuted, they say persecuted. I'm just facing persecution. I'm innocent. But look at what they have. It can't match. Even assuming that you're a member of parliament and you have not used any penny of your earnings at parliament, you can't build 5 houses in 5 years. You can't. Even if you are a minister, you can't build 6 houses in 5 years, or in 2 years, or in 3 years. And that is where this conversation of tension comes in. There's tension because some people are going to court so that they can be held accountable. And if you don't want tension, don't take anybody to court. Let the sleeping dogs lie for fear that they will bark. That's why I disagree.
This period as well, from the time that the 60th Republican president died early this month.
Yes.
Another conversation which you've added on is what he directed should be done during his funeral. He has already stated, according to the family representative, before the family and government engaged, talking of he doesn't want to the Republican president to be part and parcel of his funeral. You had another reason where you denied, saying that it's not possible that the 63 president, from the person that you've known him personally, would make those demands.
Yeah. Those wishes.
You've refused.
Yeah, I don't believe.
So you've used perception to say it's not possible because that's a person that you've known. He can't say that. I was made to go back to what he said when he did appear on a podcast on the 27th of October 2024. And I'll read word for word what he said about how he felt the organization of the founding president of the Patriotic Front, Michael Sata's memorial, was being handled. So President Edgar Lungu, former late president, did say, and I'll read in part according to his words, "But along the way, there's a feeling of despondency when remembering President Michael Sata at a time like this. There are those of us who genuinely believe in his legacy. That's why I'm saddened by recent developments. Tomorrow marks 10th anniversary since his passing, and this is on the 27th of October 2024. It is a special day, 10 years since Zambia lost a man of the people, but it feels as though some want to treat it as the end of his memory, to bury his legacy completely. But for me, I can say this without hesitation. I will not stand by while some attempts to use the occasion of his death to erase what he stood for. We cannot allow that. We cannot allow this moment to become a substitute for values we have fought to protect, especially over the last 3 years. There are people who are trying to revise history, who want to be the ones presiding over his memorial. The same people who seem determined to lay his memory to rest forever. But we are watching, and we will not simply accept that." He later on said, that is why many people are now asking what is going on. So, don't you think you are picking a thought on the same things he said about the memorial service of the founding president of the Patriotic Front, who later on became 60th Republican president, Michael Sata, where the PF, and him being as party president of PF, expressed their views of saying they didn't want the same people they felt were enemies of the party to be part and parcel of the memorial service. We later on witnessed the holding of 2 memorials, one at the Anglican and the other one at the Cathedral of the Holy Cross. So, isn't it the same thoughts that has been now been made to believe that the former president rather, said this, that he didn't want?
Well, we are using inference. There's a difference.
You also use perception.
No. I'm not using inference. I'm using character analysis. This is the man that I knew.
And I'm using words.
Okay, but yeah. I'm saying this is the man that I knew. Okay? Your logic and those that are persuaded by that logic is that because he said that in that podcast, therefore he has said it even now. Now, there's no logic there. But let me just get back to that, because I've been reflecting on this. There is a policy. There's a policy about memorials of, or late presidents.
Sure.
And the policy is this: that the state shall be responsible for the first memorial, the memorial of of a departed president, and the 10th one. That's a standing policy. The first and the 10th memorial. That was Michael Sata's 10th memorial. It was under the charge of the government, not PF. So the government was the responsible organ, the state, to finance that memorial, administer it, run it, manage it. Okay? So they were not imposing, the government was not imposing itself on PF, or it was not get crashing into that memorial. It is policy. First point. The second point is this: that respect for one another is very important. But maybe before I get to that, let me make this point. ECA was referring to the incident or the events surrounding the Miles Sampa saga. Okay? And accusing the UPND that they were responsible for that confusion in the PF. And therefore, if that be the case, in his view, they can't come and preside over the PF which they want to destroy. Now, if that is correct, let's assume that that is correct. Where is Sampa today? He's back in PF. Did they punish him? Did they punish him for that? No. So if they didn't punish him, then it means Michael Sata did not betray PF. Betray in the sense that he went on to work with the UPND, which according to them was an enemy to PF. He was just a rebellious member of PF. He was discontented that they were not going to the convention. Those are the reasons that Miles Sampa gave. He actually gave reasons. The reason why I've broken away is that I was not allowed to participate in a democratic conference in 2014. I should have won if that general conference had gone ahead. And now I've been pushing for PF to hold a general conference. Everybody is dilly-dallying. So, I'm out. And he declared himself president. Okay? So he gave reasons. And it is for those reasons, in my view, that they have decided to accept him back. If Sampa had been a traitor, according to that podcast, they should have expelled him from PF. Or they should have not accepted him to go back to PF. So there's no logic in trying to create a correlation between that and say, because of that, therefore, this is what ECL said.
So you still believe
that
those demands that were made, that have been made public by the family representative, don't exist?
I still believe that they are not true.
Then why do you think we're being told that this is what he wants?
I've already given you the reason. Even yesterday, I gave the reason that from what I know, the discussions that I had with him, when he was out of office, not when he was in office, when he was out of office, he didn't, and I repeat, he didn't express such strong hatred against HH. Not even a single day did ECL wish HH dead with that level of hate. No. He complained, of course, about the way he was being treated. He complained, of course, about the way his family was getting treated, was being treated. But he didn't express those words in strong terms that I can infer today and be convinced that yes, he could have said that I don't want HH near my grave. That's the only point I'm making.
Yesterday, the family and government did hold a press briefing, of course, updating the nation on their aggrieved arrangements that they've made, and of course, starting with this coming the arrival
of the body.
Yes, and of course, the passage using private charter. Let's talk about your opinion on just everything in between the death, government being involved, and what has been agreed until his burial next Monday.
Look, I actually don't into this matter, in a manner that will create a misunderstanding. Mm-hmm. Okay? I'm not part of ECL's family. Okay? I know the former first lady. I know some of his children. But I wouldn't consider myself part of that. I think I would be overrating myself or assuming the role that I do not have. Secondly, I'm not part of government. I don't have a position in government. That is common knowledge. I've not discussed this matter with anyone in government. Nobody from government has come to consult me. So, I'm not privy to what the two parties have negotiated and agreed to. The information that I have is what is in the public domain. Mm-hmm. Now, using that information which is in the public domain, I have my own misgivings.
Sure.
And the misgivings I have are as follows. Firstly, it is clear that there is an agreement between the government and the family that this is going to be a state funeral. That ECL, as former head of state, is entitled to a state funeral. A state funeral means the state shall be charged with the responsibility of making arrangements for that funeral, mm-hmm. and presiding over the program of that funeral. That's what a state funeral means. There's no half-state funeral, for God's sake. Could it be? a state funeral, you have half family, half state. It's either you have a private funeral or you have a state funeral. And if you have a state funeral, it has its own rules. That the state is in charge for the whole program. And who is the chief representative of that of the state? The president of the Republic of Zambia. Finish. If you want a private funeral, you can go and get one of ECL's uncles to preside. And the church will not force himself on them. And no government official will force himself or herself on them. It's a private funeral. So, if this is a state funeral, as it seems to have been agreed between the family and the government, then you can't say that at each stage where there is a gathering, where people have to be addressed, where people have to gather, the family again and the government must sit and agree on who is going to speak. You can't say, like it has been said, the body will arrive at the Kenneth Kaunda International Airport on Wednesday, and it shall be given military honors, and the president is not supposed to be there. The commander-in-chief of the people that are conducting those military honors. That's being mischievous. That's the only point I'm making. And I'm surprised that this is coming from the family that is being advised by people that have been cabinet ministers before. They expected to know the rules. I'm shocked. Okay? You can't say. So you agree. Either this is a private funeral or it's a state funeral. And each one of these types of funerals has its own rules and conventions and regulations. That's the only point I'm making. Okay? If you don't do that, then you have a different agenda from that of burying ECL. That's my conclusion. You have a different agenda.
So there's another call that maybe it's high time that there should be a law that will specifically guide on how we handle such matters like we're discussing now. Because this is not the first time. When the first Republican president died, though it's a different level of differences they had, it was the issue of burial place, but still comes back to where the family wants to have a say in the burial of high public figures like that of former presidents.
Okay, you bring up a good point. You know what? In Western countries, when you want to when you are being appointed minister, because there they ask you, it's not here where you just announce names. In Western countries and in America, the president will ask you, do you want to be minister? And there are some people that say, let me go and consult my wife first. If it is in America and you live in New York, they will say, let me go and consult my wife and see if she is agreeable for us to relocate and live in Washington, D.C. Because sometimes the wife would say no. Sometimes the children will say, no, we don't want to live in Washington, D.C. We want to live in Chicago. Okay? So, when you want to get into public service, you must accept that this is public service. Okay? And public service means, ideally, you become the property or an asset of the public. Okay? Now, your family is expected to know that. Your family is expected to know that. In 1979, we were at the State House. We were demonstrating, as the University of Zambia students. And 1979, towards the end. And the usual University of Zambia students, frenzy, we walked all the way, or we were running all the way from Unza up to State House. When you go to State House, I want to give you this example so that I clarify this point that I'm making about what you are when you take up a certain position. Dr. Wynter came to address us. And I remember that very vividly. As KK was addressing us, the wife walked from, the side, on that lawn, it as a journalist. And she came around to KK and whispered something in his ear. And she walked away. And Kaunda said to us, I've not seen that lady for 2 days. She just come from the University Teaching Hospital to visit a sick relative. She had not seen the wife for 2 days, but they sleep in the same house in Nkwazi house, because the poor fellow knocks off late in the night, goes into another bedroom. She doesn't want to disturb the wife. That is public life. It inconveniences you. It inconveniences your family. It inconveniences your children. Okay? So, ECL is now not only a family member, he is also a property of the Zambian people. That's what he is, even in his death. And the Zambian people have a say on it. Okay? And what they say must be a subject of discussion and compromise with the family.
Sure.
And the Zambian people now are represented by only one person, HH, as president. Is that very difficult for the family to understand? Is that very difficult for all these colleagues of mine who were ministers before? Are they thinking about this for the first time? So the family must be consulted by government, because ECL belongs to the family, but also the government, as I said, because ECL belongs to the larger family of the Zambian population.
Okay.
Is that a very difficult thing to conceive and find a compromise? I don't think so. So the only reason why you would not want to find a compromise and making it difficult is because you have a different agenda. That's my argument.
Well,
and I can tell you that after this funeral, after ECL is laid to rest, you shall see the agendas. You can mark my words.
What exactly are you talking about? The agenda?
I'll come back here. You invite me for another program. I'll tell you why na agenda me that will come back. Why ECL was being used as a hostage.
Okay, I'm sure until we get to that time. But let me say thank you for having made time to be part of the discussion this week on Oxygen of Democracy.
Thank you very much.
Right, so we've been discussing legacy, loss, and leadership in light of the late 60th Republican president of this country, who died on June 5th, 2025 in Pretoria, South Africa at the age of 68, and Wynter Kabimba, senior opposition figure, lawyer, seasoned statesman, and now we can add writer.
Not only that, there is one title that you leave out there. ODS, Order of Distinguished Service.
All right. Thank you for the reminder.
Yes.
Sure.
It's a very important title. Okay. Yeah. Right. Don't forget in the future.
Sure. I'm sure when you come and talk about the agenda that you think will be happening in the Patriotic Front. But I thank you as well, and thank you to you, our viewers, for being part and parcel of this week's edition of Oxygen of Democracy. My name is Alexander Musogotwane. Good night. Okay, we are done.
See you.